Hi everybody, welcome. Michael Oskam here from Pro Audio Lessons. Today I'm going to teach you how to tune your own room without the help of any tuning software. Not only are you going to save some money, but your mixes are going to translate a whole hell of a lot better. That's coming up now. Stick around. Hello everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Just a quick announcement off the top here. This video is the first installment of a brand new instructional series here on YouTube called Top Down Tuesdays. Every Tuesday, Pro Audio Lessons is going to bring you a video lesson teaching you all of the techniques the top mixers and producers use. And I should know, I learned it all directly from them. Upon applying many of these tricks of the trade to my own productions, I was fortunate enough to receive a nomination for Producer of the Year by the Independent Music Awards back in 2018. I was very blessed to have been taught the things I know, and I've always been a big believer in the idea of paying things forward. So, each week, we're going to take a look at all aspects of these tried and true techniques. So from the very top, or a very high-level overview, all the way down. So taking you more into the nitty-gritty of how it all works, and most importantly, why you're doing it in the first place. So make sure you're subscribed and make sure you've got notifications turned on so you can be the first to know when a new episode drops. With all of that out of the way, let's dive into today's topic. As mentioned at the top, I'm going to show you today how you can tune your own room without the use of any sort of third-party software. What kind of software am I talking about? Well, there is one called Arc from IK Multimedia that I actually use. And you're seeing its interface right here, right now. And I'm actually going to use this in today's demonstration to show you how effective you can be at doing this yourself. It does take, obviously, a little bit more time and effort, but ultimately, you'll be able to get similar results for free. And what you're going to notice more than anything is that your mixes are going to translate so much better. We've all been there. You mix a session, you mix a song for several hours, you take it to the car, or you put it in your earbuds, or anything. You go listen on another system, and it sounds terrible. And you get that deflated feeling inside. And you say, why on earth does it sound so bad? And you start to doubt your own abilities, and you question whether or not you should do this ever again, right? We've all been there. Now, what plugin manufacturers would like you to believe is that, well, you buy this plugin and your mixes will be better. You buy this compressor, you buy this EQ, you buy this whatever, fill in the blank, and that's going to solve all your problems. And the truth is, and you don't hear this very often, but the truth is, the reason your mixes are bad is because your room is not tuned. You're not mixing accurately. You're not hearing accurately, and therefore you're not able to mix accurately. It sounds good in your room because you are mixing your room. You are not mixing the song. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. It's really funny. People don't talk about this, and I strongly believe the reason is they make more money off of trying to sell you a plugin to fix all your problems, right? When in all reality, the plugins you have are enough to get a good mix. The problem is your room, okay? So you could, if you have money to spend, I recommend spending the money on a room tuning software as opposed to that flashy compressor or EQ or whatever, okay? Because you're going to benefit. The cost-benefit ratio is so much greater with something like a room tuning software than a compressor or whatever. So if you have money to invest, I would do that. And they're not cheap, but they're not really that expensive either. Arc 3 from IK Multimedia is what you're looking at here. And then SonarWorks 4, I believe they're on version 4. They're similarly priced, $250, $300-ish, $400 if you need the microphone, I believe, for SonarWorks. And they'll send you a measurement microphone and the software. And so, if you have that money, I suggest going for it. Now, what I'm going to show you here is an alternative to that for free. And if you feel like you get realistic results and your mixes translate well after trying this, then by all means stop there. You don't need to spend the $300-400 because your mixes are translating. The end goal here obviously is to get your mixes to translate from your home studio, your bedroom studio, your project studio, whatever it is, to the car or to a commercial playback system, right? That's the end goal. So if this technique I show you gets you there, then you just saved yourself $300-400. If you feel like you'd like to go that extra bit and pay for the software, by all means, go for it. I've tried both. I could recommend both. They're both they both do what they say. I use Arc 3. I'm not sponsored by IK Multimedia. I'm not paid to tell you that. I just like Arc 3 a little bit more. So that being said, let's dive in, and I'm going to teach you how to do this without needing Arc 3. So that's how you can really tell that they're not paying me to do this, because I'm now teaching you a way to do this without their software, thereby costing them a sale, right? So what you'll see here, though, in the software here on the interface is EQ curves, the measurement curve, my room curve, and then the curve that they're tuning is hopefully putting out, which is a flat response in my room, right? So what you do when you go to set this up, just a little background, you'll have a measurement mic, which is an extremely linear frequency response, a very flat response. And then they're going to play these tones. It's a sweeping tone, so it's going to sweep from 20 hertz all the way to 20K. It's a little bit annoying. And then they're going to have you, depending on the size of your project studio, they're going to have you place anywhere between 7 spots and 14 spots in the room. And you're going to have to do that like 3 times because it's at different heights, ear height, slightly above ear height, and slightly below ear height from the mix position. Anyway, it takes a while, and it takes some patience. But once you do all of that, it's going to run its algorithm. It's going to determine where your how your room is essentially tuned, okay? Just naturally in its natural state. So what we're looking at here is in the green shades, you're going to see the before, okay? White, you'll see, so here's before, left and right speaker, the target, which really is just flat, right? A flat response. The target is the 0 dB line on this XY, or excuse me, there's no Y. So on this frequency chart. And then you have the orange left, right, and that's the after. So after they've applied their correction, this is how close to flat we get. So if you see the orange, at 20 hertz, it falls off to about negative 12 decibels, which is fine. That's the lowest end of human hearing anyway. And then right here at about, what would I say, that's about 40 hertz is where we start to get close to flat, okay? And so you'll see from 40 hertz all the way up to 20K, it's pretty flat. That's the orange. So this is when this software is engaged, and you see this trim knob, you always have to turn this back up to 0 dB. When this is engaged, my speakers are outputting the orange, which is pretty darn flat. Okay, it's pretty close to flat, which is great because now I know that what I'm mixing is what I'm hearing, and what I'm mixing is actually what's coming out of the speakers. Okay, now the green is what the EQ curve of my room just is in its natural state, and you can see there are some serious problems here. And I should mention this: whenever I talk to somebody about mixing and their room issues with their room and mixing, the problem that they always have, and you're probably in this group as well, is in the low end. Okay, because low end is tricky to mix just as is, right? It's low. These frequencies are commonly more felt than heard. You can hear them, but they're so low, it's almost like you're feeling it as opposed to hearing it. So they're hard to mix anyway. And when you have a room that's not flat, well, good luck. I mean, you might as well, you might as well shoot darts with a blindfold. I mean, you really have no clue. And unfortunately, if the low end of your mix is a mess, the whole mix will fall apart. It's kind of like a foundation of a house. If If you build a crappy foundation to your home, the thing's going to fall down. It's similar to the low end. If your kick and your bass and all of these things that comprise the low end are not in the proper place, cemented correctly, the rest of the mix is not going to fall apart, and it's just not going to work. So it's really important that you're mixing low end correctly. Obviously, it's ultimately important that you're mixing the whole sonic spectrum correctly, but the low end is where most people struggle, and it's due to a number of things. Bass traps. If you've researched tuning rooms before, you know that a bass trap is usually like a corner of a room where bass frequencies accumulate, and there's standing waves. Maybe you've heard of that. So you'll have low end just kind of hanging out in this corner, and there'll be this huge buildup of low energy. So I kind of have that here. I'm not, you're not seeing a video of my room and the way it's shaped or anything, but a general rule of thumb that I suggest you do is I would not put your monitors up against a wall. You see this all the time. If you follow any sort of Instagram feeds where they, people like to post their home studio pics and they're bragging about how cool their studio looks. I love following that stuff. I love studios. I love seeing how inventive people are and how cool they can get their home studios to look. So I'm not knocking that at all. I'm a big fan of that stuff. But so often you will see the monitors up against a wall. And I understand that that's just a logistical thing. There's only so much space in a room, and generally desks are up against a wall, and therefore your monitor. I get it. But if your room allows it, I would recommend pulling your desk and your monitors off of your wall by a few feet, as much as you possibly can, actually. Because when it's, sound is all about reflection. And so depending on what kind of speakers you have, generally, like a lot of monitors have a hole in the back, and that's to allow low energy and air in particular to escape out the back so that you don't blow out your cone, right? But what that means is that there's a tremendous amount of low energy that's being projected backward, okay? And if that's then going to bounce off of the wall immediately and then come at you full force after bouncing around, right? So you're not going to get an accurate representation of the frequency spectrum, especially low end. So in my studio, I know you can't see it, but I have my desk about 3 feet off the wall, and then my monitors, again, are about 3.5 feet off the wall. Now, that doesn't mean I've eliminated all my low-end issues, not by any means, because there still are corners back there. Now, there are ways to prevent that from getting trapped. You could put bass traps. There are things that you can buy. They're actually kind of expensive, but there are things that styrofoam material that you put in the corners to help alleviate that problem. You can make them yourself. I have sound reflection panels that I can put up and that I have up, and I can place those at like a kitty-cornered angle in the corners to kind of alleviate some of those issues. All of that helps, but it's not going to really be the end-all, be-all solution for this, okay? You're going to have to tune your room a little bit. So do all of that if possible. And then one more thing I would say is if you're looking into buying monitors, or maybe you have monitors and they're not working, whatever the story may be, you really need to take your room size into account when you're deciding which monitors to buy. If you have a small studio in your apartment or home or whatever, you probably don't want 8-inch, 10-inch, 8-inch driver. You don't want an 8-inch cone, like the Yamaha 8s or the Rocket 8s or whatever. That's a lot of air moving and a lot of energy moving in a small space. So I always tell people if you're mixing in a smaller space, you're probably going to want a smaller speaker. So for example, the JBL 305s, I have those as my backups. Those are my Bs. Now my space is bigger, so I do have Mackie 8-inch mains, and then I have JBL 305s as my B speakers, and then I have a C pair, which are the IK Multimedia micro monitors, which are really, really good for the size and for the money, by the way. So if you're in a smaller space, you're going to have to move. You want to move less air and create less energy. And so I recommend a smaller speaker. So that being said, let's dive into this. real quick. This is how you can kind of tune your own room. So if we look at the problem in my room here, you'll see that they're at about 100 hertz, 90 to 95 to 100 hertz. This area where this green is coming down, there's a 12 dB drop off here where I am not hearing anything accurately at around 90 to 100 hertz. Okay, well, let's just say it starts to fall off here at about 70, right? So I would say from 70 to 100, I've got this pretty steep fall off of 12 decibels. Okay, and then immediately after that, you'll see this huge green spike of about 8 to 10, 9 dB at around 110 to 130, 140. I have a huge spike here, and then it kind of drops down, and then I have another 6 dB spike here from about 180 to about 300 with a little dip in here. Okay, now you're saying, okay, the software here has applied an EQ curve to kind of help flatten all of that out, which is tremendous, because ever since this has happened, and I started using this years ago, I started on version 2 and then 2.5 and 3. Anyway, years ago, my mixes started to translate much, much better because I was hearing things accurately. But if I didn't have this software, how could I tell where the holes were or where the abundance of frequencies building up were without seeing it, without the software doing it for me? Well, here's how you can do this, and I'll show you. All digital audio workstations should come with a tone generator, okay? So you're going to only need 2 plugins, and I'm going to keep Arc up because Arc's going to help me visually show you what's going on. And since you're not in my room, you're not really going to be able to hear the holes, right? You're just going to have to kind of take my word for it. So on my mix bus here, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to get my tone generator. Sorry, that was probably a little loud. Let me bring this level down a little bit more. Okay, and let me bypass that. And then I also want a EQ that or a metering, plug-in. So I happen to like the way that ProQ's meter, there we go, that the frequency analytics show up. So I'm going to use that. But any sort of isotopes, whatever you got, okay, anything that's going to show you an accurate portrayal of the frequency spectrum. So watch. Right now, a generator always defaults to 1K tone, and that's what you're going to see here is a 1K tone. That's what it looks like. Okay? So let's pull up Arc, and I'm going to show you how you can do this yourself. If you're in tune with what's going on, you can kind of already guess how I'm going to do this. So let's take this for example. Let's take 90, let's say that's 95 hertz, okay? So if I come into my tone generator, oops, I wanted to leave Arc up. There we go. If I come into my tone generator and I put in the frequency of 95 hertz, and I'm going to kick it on now, okay? And you can see how it's kind of, let's see, that's not quite, I might want to move this down to 90. I want to get it to kind of look like exactly where, yeah, that's, okay, that's probably pretty close. Let's do 80 hertz. You see how this little bulge here, so to speak, kind of matches this dip? So I'm just trying to kind of find something visually so it makes sense, but you would have to do this with your ears, okay? But I'm just going to jump to a point where I know there's a problem so I can explain the concept, and then I'll show you how to do this throughout the whole spectrum. I know in my room that there's just by looking at it now, that there's a problem at around this frequency range, correct? So if I am listening in my room and I know that I have this frequency, and let's put this back to where it was, which is negative 20 dB. I apologize if that's a little loud. In fact, let's turn it down a little so we're not blowing. Negative 30 dB. Okay. Perfect. Now, I know that I know based on what I'm seeing here that I'm not hearing that accurately. Okay? In fact, if I bypass the ARC system, I'm going to hear a tremendous drop in level at about 12 dB, right? Because right now with the ARC system on, I'm hearing the orange output, which has flattened this out, which means that they have had to add about 12 dB of gain to this range of frequencies in order for me to hear it flat. So when I bypass this, in my room, now you're going to have to take my word for it, in my room, the tone dropped dramatically. Like, I don't know, 12 dB worth. Okay? So I would know that, we have a problem here. Okay? So what I need to do now is I need to bring this up until it gets to a level where I can hear it. Now, I know this is getting much louder in your headphones, and I apologize, or on your speakers, because you're not hearing my room. But in my room, I'm boosting this 12 dB, and all of a sudden, I can hear it again. Does that make sense? So if I bypass the Pro Q here, it just disappeared on me. I literally cannot hear this in my room right now. But I bring it back, and I can hear it again. And it's not loud like it might be in your speakers. It's actually at a normal level. Okay? Now, I would want to err on the side of caution. I probably wouldn't want to push this to 12, but I might do something like this. Okay? And there you go. So ultimately, the end result, I'm going to kick the ARC system back on, and now there'll be a boost. Yeah. Let me bypass that. Does that make sense? I'm using an EQ to do essentially what the ARC system was doing, which was adding 12 dB of gain where there's a hole here. Okay? And you're saying, well, Michael, that's easy for you to determine because you're looking at what the ARC system read. And okay, yeah, you're right. But there's a way that I'm showing you, there's a way to do this without the ARC system being in place at all. I can take the signal generator, for example, and I can sweep from 20 hertz, which I can, it depends on where you're listening, if you can hear that or not. And I can, let me zero this out or turn this one off. And I can sweep around. And you're going to have to play with this yourself because it's entirely dependent on your room. So if I bring this up, okay, I'm hearing that, and I'm listening to my room. Okay, I hear this, I hear this. Oh, wait a second. It just dropped off dramatically. So I know I have an EQ hole there. Okay, so I would bring in my EQ and I would play with it until I was, okay, now I hear it again. Okay, let's keep going. As I come up to where I want, in my room, that's incredibly strong. That's incredibly strong. Let me pull this down until it flattens out again. Okay. Okay. In my room, that's a more level sound. Right? So, you see what I'm doing here? And I can kind of keep going up. Okay. That's a little bit strong in my room. I'm going to want to probably pull that down too. Let's keep going. Yeah. And I'm just doing this as I'm listening. That sounds pretty normal. And it's starting to fall off as I go up. Sorry for your ears, guys. So I'm noticing that that's starting to fall off. So what I might do is I might bring in a gentle curve like this. And you got to play with it. But now what I've done is just by listening to it, I've created a curve that I think is going to zero out my room. And let's see how that curve compares to what the measurement system did. Isn't that interesting? Pretty close, right? So here's on the left is where I heard it in my room. Now again, in your headphones or wherever you're listening, you're not going to hear it because my room is zeroing things out. But it'll work in your room. So look, in my room, I had a tremendous hole at around 100-ish, 90. Oh look, that's what this shows. So when I brought this up, it made it just back to level. Let's see what this is. Okay, well around 120, 130, there's this 6 dB, 8 dB boost. And then it kind of just stays that way until about 250. Oh, look at this. That's what I heard myself. Around 120 up to about 260, I have this at about a negative, 3 dB cut. And again, if we're going by the room software, well, they're saying that's 6 dB. So maybe this would have been more accurate. But that's okay. We're not trying to get it perfect. I'm just trying to get my room as close to flat as possible. And then as I went up the spectrum here, remember the green is my room. It's like as we went up, you can see it kind of starts to taper off in my room. And so what I did is I heard that as I went up the sonic, up the frequency range there, as I took this, scooped the tone generator up that frequency range, I noticed that it started to fall off in volume. And so I used this to kind of make up for it. And so now what you're seeing on the left in the Pro Q3 is a way to zero out the room. This EQ curve is essentially exactly what Arc 3 did to get my room to be orange, right? To flatten the room out. And that's how you can tune the room yourself. Then all you have to do is come into your EQ that you have here, save it as whatever you want, whatever is going to make sense to you as a preset, room zeroing or room tune or whatever. And then anytime you can put that in your template. So every time you create a session, it's always there. Or, every time you create a session, you just launch. In this case, I would launch Pro Q3 and I would recall room tune. And I would have that probably where I have this arc here right now, in the last slot. And there you go. Now my room is essentially zeroed out or closer to flat. And now I'm going to notice that my mixes are going to transfer and translate a lot more accurately. Okay. Now I made it seem relatively simple because it is, but it is time consuming and it's going to take you a little bit of time to really hear where the holes are. And what's almost more important than holes sometimes are where there's a buildup. And you'll notice because like I did when I was at like 120 or so, 130, it was amazing. It jumped. It got very, very loud. And so what I could do is I came into the EQ and I backed it off. I think it was 3.5, 4 dB, then closer to 6. And I just got it back to where it seemed more level. Okay. So try this at home. And see if your mixes start to translate better. Give it the time, give it the energy it takes to really flatten out your room. And at the end of the day, I think what you'll notice is if you take the time and do it, you'll notice that when you mix your next song, with that EQ curve in place, that it'll translate much, much better. And that what you're mixing is actually what you're hearing, and what you're hearing is what you're mixing. And you'll take that mix to your car and you'll be amazed. If you don't have the patience or you don't have the ear to be able to do this yourself, that's okay. But I recommend putting your money into a room tuning software instead of that flashy compressor plugin or whatever it is that you may have your eye on. You will get much more benefit out of something like a room tuning software, or maybe spend that money on some sound panels or whatever it is. Do something to help better tune your room, and you will be much happier in the end because the benefit, like I said earlier, the cost-benefit ratio is so much greater with something like a room tuning software as opposed to a flashy reverb or whatever it is you may be saving for. So thank you guys so much for checking this out. Stay tuned for more videos. More videos are always coming. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, like the video, drop a comment. I love to chat with fellow audio engineers, so drop a comment. Love to chat with you guys. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Keep mixing.